With a class object, you often want to obtain values from the object and set a value of a property within an object. These are often called getters and setters. So in this class object, we have the constructor, which we already talked about. We also have a getter and setter to get and set the writer. So we can get the writer and we can set the writer. Getter functions are meant to simply return or get the value of an object's private variable to the user without the user directly accessing the private variable. So the private variable is this underscore author that gets set when you construct the object. And then when we do get writer, it's going to return this dot underscore author. So you never actually interact directly with this variable, but it's going to get the writer, which is the author here. And when you're setting, it's the same. So you're never interacting with the underscore author, but you can set that with the writer setter. This change could invoke calculations or even overriding the previous value completely. So you can have any number of code lines in this setter to ultimately maybe do different calculations before you set it, or calculations before you get the property. So what we're going to do is make our own getter and setter for the thermostat class. We're going to create a thermostat class, and we're going to have a getter and setter. So here's the thing about this challenge is that when we construct the class, it's going to accept Fahrenheit temperature, but we're going to create a getter and setter in the class to obtain the temperature in Celsius. So it's going to have to do the calculation right within the class. So let's do that. We're going to do a class of thermostat. And in this class, we need the constructor. So when you first create the thermostat, you're going to pass in a temperature. And remember, this is going to be Fahrenheit. Now, within this constructor, we're going to set a private variable, this dot underscore temp. So the word this just means that this variable is only accessible within this class here. And the underscore temp, whenever you start a variable with an underscore, that's going to generally signify that it's a private variable, that you're not supposed to access it outside of that scope or outside of that class. So we're going to set the temp, and we're not going to just put this underscore temp equals temp, because it's passed in as a Fahrenheit and we want to convert it to Celsius. I just happen to have the equation for Celsius. So it's 5/9 times, and then we're going to temp minus 32. So now we can create the getter and setter. So for getter, we'll do get temperature, and we're just going to return this dot underscore temp, which now it's in Celsius because we're storing the value in Celsius, even though the thermostat is created in Fahrenheit. So with the setter, it's going to be the same. Set temperature, updated temp, and it's now going to still be in Celsius. So this dot temp equals updated temp. So let's look at the code down here, how we're using it. So the const thermostat equals make class. This make class function is going to return this thermostat object here. And then we're going to do const thermos equals new thermostat. So when you're instantiating an object, you always use the new keyword, new thermostat, that's this, and we're passing in 76. That goes into the constructor, the temp. And so we do this calculation to convert that Fahrenheit to the Celsius in this local variable here. And then let temp equals thermostat temperature. So thermostat temperature is going to use the getter, get temperature, and it's going to return this dot underscore temp. So a key thing to look at is that there are no parentheses after this. So generally, if something is a function, you would see parentheses after the function name, but if it's a variable or property name, it's going to not have parentheses. So getters and setters are accessed similar to properties. And then we can use the setter here, thermostat equals 26, and then it sets it with the updated temperature. And now we can say temp equals thermostat. And if we do a console.log here, we can do that with the temp, and it should have the new temperature. If I load that, 26.